Does the Quran copy off the Babylonian Talmud, Cave of Treasures, Proto-Evangelium of James, and the childhood of the Savior? So basically, this is one of the arguments that many critics of Islam bring up, whether they're Christian or atheist critics of Islam. If you read their online material, or if you watch their videos, or if you read their books, they'll always claim that the author of the Quran, who they say is Muhammad, copied off the Jewish and Christian apocryphal material. Now, the general problems with saying that the Prophet Muhammad copied off Jewish or Christian apocryphal material are these. It's called the genetic fallacy, so it's a fallacious argument. It's like saying 1 + 1 = 2. My second grade teacher said this, but she's evil. Thus, 1 + 1 cannot equal 2 because it came from an evil source. That's called the genetic fallacy. No direct evidence that these stories were in Arabian or in Arabic. The Quran claims that these stories were unknown to the Arabs. See the Quran, chapter 11, verse 49. So another problem is that even the Bible quotes from the Apocrypha and the non-canonical sources. The New Testament contains quotations and stories from the Old Testament Apocrypha, as seen in Jude chapter 9, verses 14 to 15, and 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 4, quoting the Assumption of Moses in the book of Enoch. So if this disproves the Quran, what does it do to the Bible? What does it do to the New Testament? This argument can be thrown, any Christian bringing up this argument can be thrown right back at them. So this is kind of an atheist argument to begin with. So moving on, according to 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5, 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 5 quotes from Josephus, 1 Clement, and the Syllabine or Oracles. These were all either during the time of Christianity or pre-Christian documents that talk about Noah being the preacher of righteousness, which is nowhere found in the Old Testament, but is found in these non-canonical works, that either predate or from the same time of Christianity. So even 2 Peter quotes from non-biblical sources. Moving on. According to Christian apologists, the non-canonical sources can contain truth in them. The New Testament repeatedly quotes non-biblical sources as truthful. Paul quoted Clance and Arthas in Acts chapter 17, verse 28, and Mender in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 33. He affirmed the statement of Epimenides that his statement is true. Titus chapter 1, verses 12 to 13. He quotes, he also quotes the words of Jesus, which are not contained in the Gospels, in Acts chapter 20, verse 35. So basically, the New Testament quotes non-biblical sources as truthful. Thus, this shows that some non-canonical sources can contain truth in them. So the fact that the New Testament quotes non-canonical sources shows that they can contain some truth in them. Even the Old Testament contains quotations from the Apocrypha and non-biblical sources. For instance, the Old Testament refers to the book of wars of the Lord in Numbers chapter 21, verse 14. This is not found in the Old Testament. The book of Jasher in the book of Joshua chapter 10, verse 13, 2 Samuel chapter 1, verse 18, in Acts of Solomon, in 1 Kings 11, verse 41, in the Annals of King David, in 1 Chronicles chapter 27, verse 24. The Jews obviously had canonical books which were inspired, and they had historical books which were uninspired. However, these books still contain some truth. Pagan prophets sometimes spoke the truth in Numbers chapter 24, verse 17. Hell, even a donkey talks. So truth is truth, no matter where it's found. Conclusion. According to the Judeo-Christian scholars, some non-canonical Old and New Testament sources can contain truth in them. So the Quran can be confirming, so there could be true stories found in these pre-Islamic Old or New Testament sources, and the Quran can be confirming the truth found in these sources. Keep in mind that Islam doesn't claim to bring everything new. So getting to specific arguments, one of the arguments I hear over and over again is that the Quran or Muhammad copied off the Babylonian Talmud to compose the Quran. The reason why this is false is because the Babylonian Talmud was written during the 9th century, about 300 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. And I put the references in there. And another problem is before the 9th century, we simply don't know what were the contents of the Babylonian Talmud. And the references there if you want to check. So the Babylonian Talmud postdates or came after the rise of Islam, after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. The Cave of Treasures is also another book that the critics say Muhammad copied off of. Basically, the story they claim was copied off this source is that when God created Adam, he told the angels to bow down to them, and all the angels bowed down except Satan. And this is found in the Quran, chapter 2, verse 34. So the problem is the Cave of Treasures was written in the late 6th century, in the early 7th century. In other words, about 50 to 100 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, and the references there. Another problem is this book was written in Syriac. It wasn't circulating in Arabic, so the critic would have to prove that the Cave of Treasures was circulating in Arabic, in Arabia, in Makkah, and in Medina. That's impossible to prove because this book was written in Syriac, and not only that, but it was written at least 50 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. So how can the Prophet Muhammad copy something that came after his death? Makes no sense, unless he could time travel. But let's stay within the realm of reality here. The New Testament Apocrypha was not translated into Arabic until 100 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, and they were only discovered in 1945 in the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt. No evidence that they were circulating in Arabia in Arabic in oral form. I know the critics bring up Ibn Herzog, page 270. Sam Shamoun brought this up. However, I looked into that source. I have that book, and I looked into that source. There is no full source for the story, thus it's not reliable. Thus, the Ibn Herzog source is not doesn't accurately record the historical account of the Najjar Christians. The Gospel of John, chapter 21, verse 25, states that Jesus did many other things which were not written down, and even if they were too numerous. So it's possible that there were true stories found in the New Testament Apocrypha that didn't find their way into the New Testament and found their way into the Quran. So conclusion. Conclusion. Most of these Talmudic, Jewish, or Christian apocryphal sources post-date Islam weren't written or orally transmitted in Arabic, and even if they were pre-Islamic, they could contain true stories. So not everything in the non-canonical Jewish or Christian sources is fictional. As even admitted by the Judeo-Christian scholars, they could contain true stories, and the Quran is confirming that these stories were in fact true. In the Quran, chapter 5, verse 48. Because keep in mind, even the Bible, both the Old and New Testament, quotes from non-canonical sources. So the defense here that the Judeo-Christian scholars say is that there could be some truth in here. There could be some truth in them. Same thing with the Quran. The Quran could be confirming the truth found in these Jewish or Christian apocryphal non-canonical sources.